Illustrator. Illustrator should be on everyone's desktop, and I'll try to go slow with the introduction so that people can kind of like all stay at the general pace. But John can add any of this that he wants. But Illustrator is basically this kind of in-between between Photoshop and InDesign, which are two other Adobe Suite technologies, softwares. And basically Illustrator is making vector art, and that's what sets it apart from like Photoshop. So Photoshop is really good for like loading in an image and then editing that image in some way. It's really good for photorealistic things. Illustrator is vector art, meaning that it's entirely scalable. So if I make an image that is in real world size like this big, I can scale it up to be 10 times that size and it's not going to get pixelated. It's really good for like t-shirt printing. Every t-shirt that I have ever had printed, like I do a lot of public relations work and merchandise stuff, and all of the stuff that I've had printed has been vector art. So if you want to get like physical merchandise made, Illustrator's the way to go. It's also just, it's a really easy way to combine a bunch of shapes together to make something really interesting, and you don't actually need to have, like, you don't have to be good at art to be good at Illustrator, because it's really just mashing a bunch of shapes together, and then eventually it just kind of looks cool. What is that? I don't know. All right, so we can see my screen, great. We have a tutorial online, and we're going to be referencing for this. I have downloaded it, but it's called like Illustrator Tutorial Forest Landscape. So this is what we're making today. If you want, you can search for it online, download a picture of it, and use it as reference for when we're actually like implementing it. I actually would recommend that, because what I'm going to do is make a new document, and then I'm going to load in that image. So I'm just going to try not to go too fast, and if like a lot of people are saying I'm going too fast, please let me know. But I'll give y'all like a couple of seconds to pull up specifically this image, because I'm going to be doing this image. And yeah, I just Googled Illustrator Forest Landscape, and I scrolled down, and I saw that, and I saved it. Yeah. I just kind of saved it anywhere. If they want, I can use my computer. John, she can use my computer.
Oh, okay.
As soon as it turns on. Give it like a hot second. Yeah, as y'all are doing that, eventually my computer will turn back on. It's being dumb. There we go. Okay. So hopefully you have the downloaded image. Illustrator, I see Illustrator pulling up on some of y'all's computers. So if you would see this screen, and this might pop up with it, but you'll see this screen first, and then you'll just, make a new project. This screen should pop up. You'll probably see like this first, and it's like, let's make something new. And I'm like, cool, I don't see anything. You can make things for mobile, web, print, film and video, and then art and illustration. The pretty good default way is just go with print. And then you'll see like you have a bunch of different default templates that you can choose from. So if you're making something that you wanted to print out on like 8.5 by 11, you could get letter sized. We're gonna get some specific measurements for this. So we can also change, by the way, the measure for the size of our canvas. So I'm gonna just do it in inches because I like it in inches because the numbers are better than pixels. And we're gonna do 15 inches by 8.5 inches. If you change the orientation, you could also just swap those. There's also a number of artboards, and artboards are like where your art is going to go on the screen. So like in Illustrator, there's just gray canvas and then the white block where you're doing your art. Basically, that's just like if you have the ability to export like everything you've made, but you can also say just this artboard. So like if you're doing something with like if you're doing something with like a digital pen and you're drawing, then if you have a bunch of stuff going off the artboard, you can export just the artboard. So I've named it Illustrator Tutorial. You can call it whatever you want. You can also do these like what are they called? Margins. And the margins are basically just space where you don't want your art to go. So if you wanted to make something that looked a little bit more professional and like more on needed a little bit more space on the edges, that you would do that. So I'm just gonna hit create, and it makes our canvas here. And we have a bunch of stuff, and it's gonna ask you to do a tutorial, and you say no. So it's saved as Illustrator tutorial. We have all these tools, and we have properties, layers, and libraries. Properties is really useful, and layers is really useful. Layers is actually critical. Like, half of Illustrator is figuring out how layers work. Some easy, some easy shortcuts. Control-0 centers your canvas. Control-minus makes it smaller. Control-plus makes it bigger. Control-0 is great because you see exactly what you want to see. Did she need my computer?
I can use mine.
Okay. So I'm also going to pull up my reference. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to load in, I'm going to open the reference image that I saved earlier. When I open that, it's actually quite small compared to this canvas, but that's fine, honestly. And I'm just going to move it into the gray space and make it a little bigger. So by doing this, now, since I know I want to make this thing, I'm just going to reference it as we go. Another thing that's really useful is you can make, so this is the rectangle tool. If you hold down on any of these tools, you can see the other tools pop up. So we have like rounded rectangles, ellipse, polygon, star, flare. Just taking rectangles, and like if you can hold shift and it will maintain that same size. You let go of shift, you can make whatever shape you want. I'm just gonna make then also the magic of Control-C. Yeah.
I'm opening my file, but it's opening in another window. It's not coming on this screen.
So that's fine. It's actually happening in mine as well. And thank you for reminding me of that. So if we can actually, now that we've opened it in Illustrator, we could Control-C, go into our other file, and Control-V, and now we have it in there. Which is a good point, and I should have remembered that. But yeah, you can edit either of these. So this is the reference PNG, like that's the loaded in PNG. You can also like put it onto your other canvas. And I didn't notice that they were two different canvases because they're like the same dimensions, and I just knew the dimensions of this image. But okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna make a perfect square. It's gonna be pretty small. And I'm just gonna copy it and paste it 6 times. I'm just gonna move these over into the corner. It doesn't have to be super exact. Oops, not that. Other shortcut. Pressing V moves you to the direct selection tool. So if you're ever on a tool and you're doing whatever, pressing V moves you right back to just being able to select and move things around. So I'm just gonna move these rectangles over into the corner, and I swear there's a reason I'm doing this.
Can you repeat from the triangle?
Sorry?
Can you repeat after the triangles, like how did you bring those triangles up there? I just missed it.
The triangle?
Sorry, rectangles.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry.
All I did was I went over here onto the rectangle tool, which shortcut is M, by the way. I clicked that, and then I just held shift and made a rectangle. Control-Z removes things. I'm just assuming everyone knows nothing here. So now what I'm going to do is, if we look at this image, there's a lot of nice colors in this image that we're going to want to use. So I'm going to select the top one, or this top square, and I'm going to select the Eyedropper tool, shortcut is I, and I'm just going to grab this color, and we're going to do that. So now if we swap between V and I, we can swap between Selection tool and Eyedropper tool, and so I'm just going to select the next square, grab a new color, and then select the next rectangle. Select a new color, select the next rectangle, select a new color, and then you just kind of do this until you have all the colors. So we're making a color palette on the side, basically. And it just makes it a lot easier in these tutorials to quickly get the colors that you need. So I'm missing this one. I'm missing this one, and I'm missing that one. All right. So I'm really fast, so I'm going to go a little bit slower. But now we have a color palette. So we've got our image that we're going to make, and then all the different colors that we will need to make the image. I'm going to center my screen again. There we go. I'll give y'all like a couple minutes. I'll give y'all a minute to finish that up because I see not everyone's done. You have a question? Or no? You're just, yeah. Anyone else have questions so far? Everyone's able to use it.
How did you find your reference image?
I went on to that there Google, and I searched Illustrator Forest Landscape, and I scrolled down to the tutorial image here.
Okay.
Any questions so far? We'll get into more stuff in a second.
How do I undrip the color?
Change from this tool to...
No, like I selected the color and I just want to undrip it like into the square.
Okay. So what you're gonna want to do is hit V, which is your direct selection tool, and then you're gonna select the color, like select the rectangle that you want to change the color of, and then you just click using the eyedropper tool on the color.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure. All right. I see people with some color palettes, which is great to see. So also another thing I'm going to mention now is that I mentioned that layers are really important. So this is currently all on layer 1 in our layers, and that's just the default. You can drop down this layer and see everything that we have in it. We have the image, and we can select them within layers, and we can also select them in the scene that we're working in. So clicking these buttons on the side makes us able to select them in the actual scene. And we have the whole color palette here. Let's rename this layer reference, because we're going to be making a good number of layers. But now we can select all of those. And let's say that for whatever reason, we didn't want to see this layer anymore. We can just hit this toggle visibility, control click, and we just don't see it anymore. So we're just hitting that off and on. We can also do that for individual things. Like if I didn't want to see this rectangle, it goes away. So for example, if I'm tracing something and I want to see if you're tracing something, eventually you're going to want to see what it looks like when it's not traced. And if you're worried that it looks horrible, then you would just toggle off and on what it looks like to see how it's coming together. So yeah, let's make a new layer. So there's down here at the bottom, we can see there's this little piece of paper flapped up on the side.
Can you just repeat the layer thing?
Yeah, so
I'm sorry.
you're fine. So we have renamed this layer reference.
How
and
did you make that? Can you just repeat that?
it is so when you make a new Illustrator project, you will default to having layer 1 be in your project.
Okay.
And so everything currently is stored in layer 1.
Okay.
You can rename them, you can shift around what's in them, you can shift around order of what's in them.
Okay.
And what makes them powerful is that if I hit new layer, create new layer, I've made a layer 2. And if I call it, I don't know, art, we'll rename it later. If I make something, I made something. It's real cool. I have this. Now everything that's in the layer art is going to be over what's in the layer below it. So really simple, but really powerful. Because if we, in this, we have a lot of layering in this image. So we're going to want to make sure that these trees are above what's behind it, but we want these bushes to be in front of it. When you get into more complex art, this is an important part of it, basically. But yeah, so let's just kind of start making this. So, fun fact, Control R puts rulers on your canvas. And this is really useful because we can grab, if we just click and hold on those rulers, we can pull out guidelines. And guidelines will never be visible in your final project, but if you are for example, you're making something you're making a flyer, you should be using guidelines everywhere because you can guarantee that like everything is like 2 inches off, and then make sure everything is about the same size. And then things will snap, things snap to those guidelines, so you can make sure that things fit within the size that you're looking for. But we don't care about these boys right now. First, let's just make a background. And we know our background is this light yellow color, the one that I have on the bottom here. So let's make something that is the size of this artboard. So if I just select the rectangle tool and I just click anywhere on the screen, instead of making a rectangle, this pops up, which says, what does it look like? What's its width and height? So by doing this, I can say that it's the size of our artboard, 15, and then 8.5. And I now have this rectangle. We can look, and like you see, there's nothing in it. It's just this object in space with an outline. All it has is its size dimensions. Down here we have a fill and we have a stroke. So we can double click on these, and because we have the rectangle selected, we can say, I want it to be this obnoxious red color, and now it is that obnoxious red color. We can make it stroke. Something visible, this darker color. And then, if I can move this.
How do we get to that?
Okay, so rectangle tool, which is M, if you want a shortcut. Just click on it, and then just click anywhere on the screen, and you will have the dimensions come up.
So how do you get the color to come up?
The color appears by selecting the rectangle itself, and then double clicking on the fill and stroke in the bottom, and then just selecting whatever color you want. So that's how you would make something when you didn't have a default color palette. Yeah.
What is stroke?
Stroke is the border. So I was actually just going to show y'all. We currently have a color for our stroke, but we can't see it because it's 1 pixel size. If you go to properties, you can increase or decrease the size of your stroke. So I'm increasing it. It's now 35 pixels, and we can see it quite clearly. And one thing that y'all probably may or may not have noticed is that these rectangles, these rectangles have a fill and no stroke. And that's what we are going to be looking for in making this artwork anyway. So if I took this rectangle, and then I grab the Eyedropper Tool, which shortcut is I, and we're making like the background canvas for our image. So if I just click on this light yellow, it has now mimics the color of the fill and stroke of the rectangle we selected. So now it has the light yellow, no stroke, and we can center it right into our canvas. So now we have a background. Sorry?
Could you repeat that?
Yeah. So this was something else. It didn't have those same colors. It had a stroke, it had a fill, and we had basically set it up, and we decided we wanted to change it. So we select that image or that rectangle, use the Eyedropper tool, and then we selected this rectangle that already has those properties.
Okay.
So if I did that here, it would be the new darker color, no stroke. If I, sorry?
If like one of those palette rectangles had a stroke, it would copy that as a stroke.
Yes. So if I made that, oh, that wasn't right. 30. I did a dash, that's why. So now it has, I gave it a stroke. If we did it again, it gets the stroke. But we don't want that right now. So does everyone have this now? Cool. So let's just take a look at our image here. We have the lighter colored background, and then we have a slightly darker colored, I forget the word for it, but it's like rolling hills in the background. Let's make that. And to make that, we can introduce, I currently selected that. All right. We can introduce another very important tool in Illustrator, which is the Curvature Tool. It's Shift plus squiggly line. I usually just click on it manually, personally. But it's a tool that I actually showed you a little bit earlier, where you can just make curvy shapes as you want, and then you complete them. You can move these I forget what they're called. You can move anchor points around to change what the shape is. So this is how, like, I'm sure people have seen like those minimalist images online of like a character where their eyes aren't there and it's just like one color for all of them. Like if their skin is all one color and then like their outfit's all one color, all that. You can make like very realistic versions of that using this tool and just by tracing the character. So that's how you do it. So let's use that. And let's just, by the way, another thing, let's check our layers. So make sure that we have the art layer selected. And then we're going to click on our curvature tool and let's just make some curves. They don't have to be perfect. Something that you think looks kind of hilly. So just make that. When you're done covering the artboard itself, just click around like that. So that you come, when you hit like, if you make more than 2 anchor points, and then you circle around and click on the original anchor point, then you complete that particular object. And it will no longer be prompting you to create, to like move the thing more. So the other thing, when you're done with that, click the eyedropper tool and make it the darker color.
How did you get the curvature tool again? Like, what was the shortcut?
I've never used the shortcut. It's Shift plus.
Well, no, hold on.
I don't actually know.
Go over it again.
There you
It's like
go.
Shift comma or something. No, it's Shift tilde.
Shift tilde.
Tilde.
Ah, magic.
It's in the corner.
Yep.
So you see it. So you have it selected, so that's how you get like an see if you want to make those, you can just kind of like keep doing stuff. Right. Yeah.
All right. So you've got
Yeah,
your
so to
curves.
make those, though, you can go
I'm
all
sure
the
they
way
look
down,
great.
kind of go all the way
I see some people that are doing with curves, so I'll wait a second. But for those of you that are done, so select that. Control click, select. So, well, okay. We're going to select both of these things. There's a myriad of ways to select both of these objects. So right now we're selecting the background, that's the light yellow, and then the slightly darker yellow curves. What we want, like what we're looking at here, is we have, you can see the red lines differentiate between like different potential objects we could have. Because we've selected these two, we can go to, I'm gonna find it.
How do we select those?
You can just like, if you just click and drag, you can select like that with your selection tool on. You can click one, hold shift, click another. You can go into your artboard and click the little small button in the corner that highlights everything in that artboard. And by doing this, we've selected the 2 objects. So then, where is the shape builder tool? There it is. So this is the shape builder tool, Shift M. This is one of the 2 really useful tools in Illustrator for making complex shapes. Right now you see a little plus next to my mouse. If I hold Alt, it becomes a minus sign. And this is what allows us to include or exclude parts of an object from our final piece. So I'm going to hold the minus, click on the screen, and drag it into this extra bubble that we don't want anymore, and release. And it goes away. And you've gone from having what is a kind of weird bubbly thing to having something that fits right in your artboard. So, to show it again, I selected our two objects. They are both selected. I click the shape builder tool, or I do Shift M. The Alt button lets you, if you hold Alt, you're removing objects. If you're not holding Alt, you're adding objects. Hold the Alt button, drag it into the space, and it highlights. Let go of the click, and it goes away. So some people have done this. I'm trying not to go too fast or too slow. So who still needs help? You're getting help? Are y'all both having trouble with it?
I figured it out, but I'm having trouble.
Okay. Raise your hand for John in a second. Okay. So we have this rolling hill now. I think we're good to move on. So also just we're gonna save this because saving is important. I'll just put it, so I have it saved in this. One time I did like 2 hours of work in Illustrator without remembering to save it, and then my computer shut down and I lost it all and I was very upset. But okay, next thing, we look at this image. We have our rolling hills now. They don't have to look perfect. We're not trying to be perfect right now. The next thing that I see are trees, and these trees are actually just triangles. So you might wonder, how do we make triangles in Illustrator? There are plenty of ways to make triangles. He needs help, I think. So that shape builder tool, that rectangle tool we had, where the shortcut was M, hold down on that, and we have all these other options for things. If we click on the Polygon tool, the Polygon tool lets us make a polygon. And in this case, it's a hexagon. But we don't want a hexagon. We want just 3 sides. So if we just click in the scene anywhere, then it says, how many sides do you want? And the answer is we want 3 sides. I don't care about the radius right now. So we have a triangle now. So what I did was I went to the Polygon tool, and I just clicked on this in the screen somewhere, made a triangle. We can now make that triangle look like a tree. And the way that we just kind of pull its dimensions so that it kind of looks like what we see in the image. And it's like, you know, stretch it out. Cool. So we have a triangle. We can also, it's pretty big. Let's hold shift and scale it down so that it fits more with what the scene looks like. Also, they are the darker color. So I'm going to click on the Eyedropper tool and click on the darker yellow. And then I just drag them in. And we have a tree in the scene. Now I'm going to copy and paste it. Maybe scale a few down. Have different variations of sizes because that looks more realistic. There. You can move things like if you aren't satisfied with the way something looks, you can move them like in very small increments with the arrow keys. That helps a lot. It also, like, if you really wanted this one to be, like, in a very specific place, you can zoom in really close to them, and then the movement of, like, the scale at which you're moving them gets really, really tiny. So, making small changes that would, that make a really cool effect when you've zoomed out a lot. So, everyone got trees? Awesome, everyone's got trees. Okay, so, it's not perfect, but that's fine. This is another really important tool that I'm going to bring up in a second. If we look at this, in the background there's like a bush. Like you can see it in the foreground too, these bushes. This is a more complex shape and we can't just use a polygon tool to make this. So what we're going to do is we're going to make one shape and we're going to copy it and reorient it a lot so that it looks kind of like a bushel of grass. So I'm just going to grab our the Curvature Tool again, and I'm just going to click, 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 click. Like, just 3, like 1 point, 1 on top, 1 on bottom, and then 1 on the side, and then connect the shape. And then, like, now I just have this weird, like, kind of oval-shaped thing. Now I'm just going to still have the Curvature Tool selected. We can add and remove new anchor points by clicking on the lines. So I'm going to click down, make a new anchor point, and then drag it closer to the other one. So it's like a crescent moon kind of look. And this is a blade of grass.
Could you, yep.
Yeah, yes, I can do it again. So, Curvature Tool, I have selected it. I'm going to make a point in space, make a point somewhere below it. It does not have to be exact. Make a point to the side, and then connect the path all together. It makes this like little blob. Then you can take, make a new path by clicking on part of the path. Makes a new anchor point. Click it and just drag him in there. So now we have 2. And yeah, so now we have the little things. So I'm going to do the really mind-blowing thing now. I'm going to move them to the side. And I'm just going to start layering them. Oops. There you go. Highlight both of them, copy and paste those. I'm going to tilt those. I've just making a little bush. Another thing, in properties, there's the transform of your image. You can flip them over the X or Y axes as you need to. So I'll do that for these. I'll like reverse them. But like you can make whatever shapes you want, honestly. I'm not gonna stop you. Yeah. Okay, so now I have, like, if we look at, let's see. If we look at, like, just this part, if you ignore the part that's under this rectangle, that kind of looks like a blade of grass, roughly. And so just kind of make it whatever you want it to look like. And then we can, I'm gonna let you all finish what you're doing before I go to the next part. So let me know, like, kind of just like look up when you're done, I guess. I don't know. Who still needs help making their little patch of grass? Okay. Haven't heard anyone say anything, so I'm gonna move on. So go to your window, and you're gonna have all these things pop up. We want to open a new window. We want to open Pathfinder. Pathfinder is really useful for a million reasons. But this is what we're going to use to make this shape look better. Because right now, there's so many objects layered on top of each other, we need to kind of remove some of this geometry. So we have all of these parts of our leaves selected. What we're going to do is we're going to go to shape modes, and we're going to unite them. So make sure you have all of those images, like all of the parts of your leaves selected, and click unite. And it removes all that extra geometry, and you just have like the outside outline of the shape. So now, like, it's just one thing.
How do you get the Pathfinder?
You go to Window and Control Shift. Oh, yeah. Sorry. So now we have like this one shape. Let's introduce the line tool. We're going to take the line tool and we're going to click and drag a line through the top being what we want in our image and the bottom being what we don't want. So if I make this line and then highlight everything again, we can now see that I have the grass patch and then I have the line separating the grass patch from the rest of the thing we didn't want. And then going back to Pathfinder, we hit divide. And when I do that, it groups these two images together, but it makes a cut between the top and bottom parts of the image. So right-clicking on it, we say ungroup, ungroups the two separate images from each other, and now we have just our little bush patch. So to explain that again, go back to when we had geometry, we made a shape. we layered the shape a lot of times using like we just transformed the shape and like reflected it over itself, maybe layered them all until we had a shape we liked. Then we select all of the shape, open up Pathfinder, union the shape. Now it's just one thing. Then we make a line, and we strike it through our little grass patch. Now we have a line as well as, oh, I lost it. Now we have the line, and we have our object.
Can you just repeat like from where you just had these separate?
Yeah. Okay, so they had geometry.
Yeah.
You open up Pathfinder, which is Window, Pathfinder.
Where can I get the Pathfinder?
So if you go into Window at the top of the screen and scroll down to Pathfinder, there. So now you select all of your geometry there, and then click in Shape Modes, Unite. Unite makes it all just one image. Then we go to our Line Segment tool, and then strike a line through the part that we want to cut in half. Highlight everything again, so that we have the line as well as the shape. And then we hit Divide. Divide separates them, so they're now separate objects.
Divide
Is in Pathfinder below Unite. So now right-click this. So like if we select this, it's still one image. If we right-click it, we can ungroup it, so now they're separate images. And I no longer care about this bottom part, so it's gone now. And then the part everyone's been waiting for, Eyedropper Tool, make it the darker color. Well, okay, what's wrong here? What's going wrong here in this image? I've made it the darker color.
Is it behind the layer?
Yeah, it's the layering problem. So this is the only thing I've selected right now. I accidentally made this bush in reference. So I'm just going to drag it up into art. That's all it was. But that's why layering is really important. So you make sure that everything stays all where you want it to be on the screen. But yeah. So now we just kind of have some grass. And it's in there. We can copy and paste him. Put him somewhere else. Yeah. All right.
So I have the grass divided. How do I delete the lower half?
When you click on it, do you see, like, does everything still get highlighted? Or,
It's like a group right now.
yeah.
It's like I see a line.
Okay, John, thank you.
Yeah, right click.
Cool.
Oh, so you double click.
So, next part is, okay. So if we look at this image, we have, like a foreground and a background. To differentiate between them, we just have some really thin rectangles. The way we can do that is we already have a rectangle that's it is the width of our canvas. So if I just copy that, and then I'm gonna make a new layer because I like making new layers. I'm gonna make a new layer and I'm gonna call it, like, I don't know, ground. And now I have a ground layer. And I'm just going to paste this again. I have a new rectangle, and it's, I'm going to change its color so that it's one of the peach ones. I'm just going to put that on top of our artboard and just kind of scale it down so that it kind of looks like what we see there. I'm going to copy that and paste it and just do the same thing over here. And then just kind of restructure it as I feel I need to. Yeah. So we've kind of very quickly recreated this background that we see. We can also duplicate these things and layer them on top of each other, change their sizes, and then we can change their color. So I'll make this one just a different color. We are mimicking essentially those straight lines that we had in the background of this image. So you could also just like make a new rectangle as well, and it can be the width of the screen, which is 15 inches, and then the height could be, I don't know, whatever you want it to be. And you make another one of those, and then you can just copy and paste what you've already made. Make these really thin. And also, in case you haven't noticed, when you paste a duplicate object, it always is created in the center of the screen, which is why it's not going like on top of the other objects. So if I wanted to like spruce this up, make it more even, I can zoom in and move them around where they are. Yeah. Okay. So I'll give y'all a couple of seconds. It doesn't have to be perfectly mimicking the image. We're not going for perfection here, but everyone is just kind of generally getting the gist of what we're trying to make, like, and how to make it. Hopefully. I'll give y'all a couple of seconds to finish that up. Okay, so all right. So another thing, so now we get to do this really fun thing where we just reuse assets we've had before. Where so if we look at this image, we see like the foreground, like, ooh, I moved that too fast. Like the this section where we have this tree, there's the background that has like those triangle trees we had before. It has the same ones, just in a different color. So what we can do is we can take the ones we had before and hopefully put them in the new layer so that they are up there. And then change their colors to be the same as the image. And then one other thing, this is also why layering is cool. So this like peach looking tree, we want it to be sitting on this line, but as it stands right now, that doesn't look the best. Like, we want to have clean lines in Illustrator, and currently like there's like very clearly a triangle sitting on top of a darker color. So two options: you can make this the same color as this. You can also make a new layer and call it trees. Oh, there we go. Make it trees, and then put your trees into that layer. And now everything we make will be behind that darker color if we stay in this layer. So yeah. Like that.
How did we do the
Which part?
the darker color one?
I just took like one of the rectangles that I had already made,
Okay.
copied and pasted it, made it the new color, and layered it on top. Okay. We can also grab other parts of our scene and drop it in. Like so. Change its color, change its size, and just put them there. Alright. So, the next part that we can talk about is, I'm gonna leave, like, so we have 12 minutes. Is everyone here planning to leave at 7? Or, like, alright. So if y'all need to leave, you're welcome to leave. I can also keep going if y'all want, because we're not gonna be able to get through every single piece of this today, but you've learned, as of, like, right now, most of the tools to make these things. Like, you could make this part here, like these little bushes. You can make them using shapes. You can merge the shapes together. You can make them using the Curvature Tool. So like, if I make like something like that, I could make this shape into pretty similar to what that was, to make it a bush. So like, there are some things here that aren't teaching y'all new things. I'm going to try and teach y'all the new stuff as we go. So I'm going to actually skip to the trees now, just because we need to fill time. Make sure we don't run out of time for all this. So I'll make the trees. Click on the screen somewhere. The height of our screen is 8.5. The width, we don't care. We don't want it to be 15 though. Make it like 3. That's a bit too big, but that's fine. Drop it on our artboard. Make it a little thinner. I've also done the amateur mistake again. Put it on the wrong layer. So I'll make a new layer. And I'll call it Dark Tree. My layering names are great. And I will move my rectangle into that layer. Now it's in front of everything. Grab that eyedropper tool and make it this magenta? Is that a magenta? I'm not sure. But yeah. So now we have the makings of a very basic tree. We have 2 trees though. Copy and paste that. Make this one smaller. Something like that. So we have 2 simple trees. You could also, like, I see some people are trying to like make it fit to the screen. You're welcome to do that as well. Like, just take the rectangle tool, make something, and then have it like drag it so that it fits the dimensions. It's perfectly fine. However you want to do it. So you'll eventually end up with 2 like large trees. We can copy and paste these things and then layer them on top and then like flatten this so it's like half the size. Change its color to the darker one, and now we have shading, which is real fancy.
Shading?
Sorry?
Oh, shading. How do you do that?
1 second. So I made a rectangle. It's the height of the artboard.
Right.
And then I just placed it wherever I thought it looked good.
Okay.
And then I copied and pasted that same rectangle. And now I'm just gonna like make it half the size of the other one.
Intersect it should make it half.
Yeah. Okay. So now we have these branches. There's, again, many ways we could make these branches. We could, that's a good way to do it actually. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just take the Curvature Tool. I did say before, like, Curvature Tool allows us to like make a complex shape by like making these different anchors and then connecting them. We don't always have to finish a shape. So if I do this and then click on the selection tool, I've made this weird looking shape. It doesn't ever actually connect, and that's fine. You can do it that way. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to take the Curvature Tool and I'm going to click on like just some part of the tree, and then I'll click out and up, and then just click back. So now I have this thing. It's currently, if we look at the properties of this object, it's got a fill, it's got no stroke. Let's fix that. Let's have it be no fill and only stroke. If we swap that around, it's now just a line. It's a curved line. And we can go to properties and up the size of the stroke to make it look like more like a tree branch. So I'll do that again. I grabbed the Curvature Tool. I clicked once, clicked again. Oh, now it's defaulting. Hold up. Let me go back. All right. Curvature Tool. I clicked in the scene. clicked again, clicked again. That's perfectly fine. I've made like kind of like a half circle. And then we see its properties. It has a fill, it has no stroke. We swap those. Shift X is the shortcut for that. We swap them around. So now the stroke is that color and there's no fill. And then we just up the size of the stroke so that it now has a very, very thick stroke. Yeah.
What's the keyboard shortcut to increase the stroke? Like,
I don't know. I don't know if it has one. I just go to properties, and then with that shape selected, go to properties and just alter the stroke size. Yep. Another thing you can do that I learned from this tutorial is now that we have like an object that we like, we could transform. Is it in transform? Hold up.
Expand it?
Sorry?
You trying to expand it?
I'm trying to make it into an object.
Yeah, object expand.
Ah! Where is it? Expand. Thank you.
There we go.
Yeah. So that's a fancy thing where basically we had a line. This is only a line. And you go to object expand, click OK, and it becomes a shape, like an actual shape. But yeah. So now it has like dimensions. Here's another fun fact. Let's say we didn't like how this looked. Like, you know, I don't like how this is really close to this line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select it, and then I'm just going to hit the Curvature Tool, and now I can see all those anchor points of this shape. And I can move them to make them look different. So now I've just adjusted it slightly so that it's no longer touching the edge of the screen. So yeah, now we have that. Other things. So the way that this is made is the same way, like these things, these other curves are made the exact same way as this one. This, if you look at it, is just a rectangle with one of the sides, one of the points on the side pulled down. So if we make a rectangle, then like, yeah, if we make a rectangle like that, and then we select with the Curvature Tool on this breakpoint, or I'm calling them breakpoints. I've been using too much Unity.
Actually, yeah, we forgot. If y'all
Fill
could
out the thing, please.
form on the wall there, fill that out.
Yeah,
Would be so kind.
please do it. It helps us. It helps us out a lot. It
It's
should be.
It's not easy to see. It's on there. It's in red. There it is. I'm sorry.
oh,
Yeah, just get close to it.
But yeah, learn in Illustrator to think about images and images as shapes. A lot of these things are just complex shapes, and not complex shapes. Like this is, you can make all of this. Like how do y'all think we make? How would we make the little leaves on this tree?
Just the curvature.
Yeah, it's fine. You could also make like a diamond, and then you could. I'll actually show that. I'll make a diamond. So if I want to make a diamond, click here, and have the polygon have 4 sides, and it's a square. Turn it on its side, and it's a diamond. Another cool thing you can do is there are points or paths that are like hard paths, and then there's the rounded paths. And these are all hard paths, and I'm making these words up, I'm very sorry. But like basically they make points. Whereas if we double click these, they become rounded. So if I double click on any of these, they become rounded, become tight. Like this is pretty useful for that. And I have actually able to make the little leaves just by altering the dimensions of that square. The flowers, can be made a number of ways. You could just put a bunch of circles together, honestly. Like, you could probably do that. You can also grab a star tool, make a star, and then, so now we have a star. We can also, like, the direct selection tool is a useful tool as well. It's slightly different from the selection tool. So the selection tool lets you move things around. The direct selection tool lets us alter the edges of these things. So these new secondary breakpoints appear, where you can round edges. So this is how they made these flowers, just by taking the sharp edges and like softening them. And then throwing a circle in the center of it.